Now open a new model and use the settings as shown. Display units as metric SI, steel section database as Indian, steel design code as IS 800 and concrete design code as IS 456. Now the uniform grid spacing, the number of grid lines in X and Y direction is 4 and the spacing of grids is 6 meters in both X and Y direction. And the number of stories is 23 stories, and the typical story height and the bottom story height are 3 meters. And we have to use the custom story data option over here since we have to create sets of similar stories. And now choose the edit story data option, and now here the story number 23 is the master story for all the remaining stories, and all these stories are similar to the story number 23. Now what we have to do here is to create different sets of the stories which are supposed to be similar by changing the master story. Now go to any one story between story 1 to 8 since all of them have to be similar. Choose story number 8 and now make it as the master story and change all the other stories as similar to story number 8. Now choose another story between 9 to 14. 9 to 14 and change it as the master story. And change the remaining stories as similar to story number 14. (15 to 19) next. Now the last set is already similar to story number 23, so you don't have to change anything. Now you choose the grid only option. Now the next step is to design the materials for the building, and now you have created the plan and the 3D model of the required building. Now go to define material properties and add new material. Change the region to India, material type to concrete and grade as M40. Click on OK and OK again. Now add new material again, and now material type is rebar and the grade is HYSD, grade 415. Click on OK twice. Add new material again, and this time grade as mild, grade 250 for the horizontal ties. Now you've added all the required materials. Now you have to define the frame sections. Now you have to define the frame sections for the building. Go to define, section properties, frame sections, add new property, and section shape is concrete rectangular. Click on OK. And now change the property name as beam 500 by 5, sorry, column 500 by 500, and change the material as M40 grade, and change the dimensions 500 by 500. And now choose modifier story bar to see the reinforcement, and change the longitudinal bar as HYSD 415 and confinement bars as mild 250, and make sure that the clear cover is 40 mm. And now click on OK and OK again. Now you can choose add copy of property, and now change the name. See, and it has to be 550 by 550. I think, yeah, 550 by 550. 550 by 550. And the material is M40, and change the dimensions. And you don't have to click modify or show rebar since it does not change column. Okay, click on OK, click on OK, and add copy of property again, and this time 600 by 600, column 600 by 600, M40 grade, change the dimensions 600 by 600, and click on OK. Now choose add new property, and this time choose auto select, and choose the property name as auto select columns. This property is used for creating the required columns for the similar stories of the building, and auto select design type as concrete. And choose the 3 columns and add it to the auto select list. And now click on OK. Now you've created the auto select list for the columns, and now create the same for the beams. Add new property, and first create the beams. Concrete rectangular. And okay. Beam 500 by 350. Change the material as M40 grade of concrete rectangular, and change the dimensions, modify show rebar, and change the design type to M3 design only, which is only for beams, and change the longitudinal bars to HYSD 415 and confinement bars to mild 250. And the clear cover, make sure it's only 25 mm for the beams and 40 mm for columns. Now you can use add copy of property. Now create beam 500 by 300, M40 grade of concrete 500 by 300. Modify show rebar, you need not click and check. And similarly create another beam of the dimension 600 by 400, M40 600 by 400. Done. Now create a new property, which is the auto select list for beams. Auto select list and auto select beam is the property name. Auto select design type as concrete and choose the 3 beams and choose add and click on OK. Now you've created the beams and the columns for the building, and you've created the auto select beams and columns, which is the property we are going to use for creating the columns and beams required for the similar stories in the building. Now click on OK. Now next you have to define the slab. Go to define section properties and slab sections and add new property and choose the property name as slab 150 since it is 150 mm. Slab material is M40. Thickness is 150 mm. And now the slab 150 mm of 150 mm has been added as shown in slab properties and click on OK. Now you have added all the required beams and columns for the design of this structure. You have added beams of 500 by 300, 500 by 350 and 600 by 400 mm and columns of 500 by 500, 500 by 550 and 600 by 400 mm, and you have created auto list property for both the columns and beams which are used to create beams and columns in the similar stories, which are 1 to 8, 9 to 14, 15 to 20 and 21 to 23. Now we have finished defining all the elements of the required elements of the building. Now we have to draw all the elements in their specific positions. Make sure that the similar stories option is selected and then choose quick draw column from the draw menu, draw beam or column of base objects and quick draw columns, and then make sure that the property selected is auto select column which you have created, and now draw all the columns. Now click escape. Now you have to draw the beam similarly. Choose draw beam or column of base objects, quick draw beams, and then make sure the property is selected as auto select beam. Press escape again. Similarly, draw all the slabs. So draw floor or wall objects, and then draw quick draw floor or wall. Okay. We have drawn this for the first 8 stories. Now go to story number 9. Now make sure that the similar stories option is selected and do the same thing. Draw Draw the columns and the now just don't mind this joint which I've drawn by mistake. Now we have to choose the lateral sections as specified in the figure. Next, move to story number 14. Now draw the columns and beams for the specified and required lateral section. Now move on to the next set of stories. Now we have finished drawing the model of the building. Now we have to apply the loads to the building. Now go to story 1. Okay, now I'm in story 1, and make sure that the all stories option is selected, since the dead load is the same for all the stories. Now select all the shells. Go to assign. Then shell load uniform, and then change it to 2 kilonewton per meter square, and make sure that the load pattern name is dead. And then click on apply, and then click on OK. Now make sure the similar stories option is selected, since the live load is different for all the stories. And then select all the shells out. And then go to assign shell loads uniform, and then change the load pattern name to live, and the load to 5. Now go to story number 9. Select all the shells Make sure the similar stories option is selected and assign the live load. Now go to story number 15. And select all the shells. Now go to story number 20. Select the shells and assign the live load of 3.5 kilonewton per meter square. Now we have to apply the wind loads for the different sections of the building, which is varying at different structures. And now we have to first define the wind load. Go to define section and then load patterns, and then type wind load, wind, and select the type as wind, and then autolateral load as Indian IS 875 1987, and then click on OK. Click on add new load and then choose modify lateral load. And since the building is situated in Bangalore, the wind speed is 33 meter per second, and the terrain category is 3, and the structure class is C, and all of this is according to the IS code. And the topography factor is 1 and the risk coefficient is 1. Now click on OK. Click on OK again to exit the define load patterns box. Now after defining the wind loads, we have to apply it to the varying sections of the claddings and all the different stories of the building, and this you can do by choosing the elevation option, and then a pop-up is shown which shows the elevation, and then select all stories and select all the 23 stories and apply the cladding load as per the IS code 875 1987. And similarly you have to apply it for all the different stories with varying lateral sections, and then you have to check the design check for the building and make sure that all the frame sections are passing the design check and there's no failure. And thank you. And this video is made by Sai Pradhyumna of College CBIT as a part of the final assignment of tall building design course from Skyfi Labs. The tall building design online video tutorials from Skyfi Labs were used to complete this project.